Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and you probably want better gear in Final Fantasy XIV if you're watching this video. Or you just like the sound of my voice. Either way, we're going to cover how gearing up works in 14, so let's get started. There are time codes on screen now if you want to skip to a specific part. First things first, let's talk about the game's item rarity. It isn't too important, but it's the most basic thing to get out of the way. On a loose scale from common to uncommon, it goes white, pink, that's ethereal, green, blue, and purple. Now, if you're used to games where purple or perhaps gold and orange are the best colours, you're expecting to be decked out in purples as well. That isn't quite how it works in 14. Purple items are largely restricted to relic weapons. Indeed, item rarity or colour coding isn't too important. What you really want to be looking out for is item level. What is item level? Well, as the game itself puts it, item level indicates the overall strength of a piece of equipment. The higher the item level, the better the gear. For example, a sword with an item level of 200 is likely going to have more strength on it than a sword with an item level of 100. And that is the easiest way to think about it. Seeking higher item level is your primary way of gearing up. This is also because the majority of content in 14 is gated by item level. If you want to enter the raid of unending loneliness, you will, for example, need an average item level of 200, the average coming from across all of your equipped items. So for the most part, you don't need to worry about looking for equipment with this stat or that stat, just look for the highest eye level you can equip. And for future reference regarding tomestones, I will be talking about them on a tier 1 to 3 tomestone scale, because that is typically how the game presents them. An example from Stormblood: tier 1 tomestones are the tomestones of Poetics, tier 2 tomestones of Mendacity, tier 3 tomestones of Genesis. Aside from tier 1, tomestones will cycle with the game's patches. For example, when Stormblood released, tier 2 tomes were Rarity, tier 3 were Creation. As the patches went by, Creation eventually dropped down to tier 2 as a new tier 3 came out, and tier 2, Rarity, became obsolete. Poetics have, so far, always remained as tier 1, so if I'm saying tier 1 tomestone, it means Poetics. So, how to gear up? From level 1 to 45, you'll be gearing up through quests, dungeons, and so on and so forth. However, you don't really need to worry about it too much at this level. You don't need to spend effort, and you certainly don't need to spend money on new equipment, as there's a good chance it will be replaced almost immediately. If you are below level 45 and want better equipment, however, your best bet is running the highest level dungeon available to you. Once you hit level 45, you'll unlock your job's artifact gear, which is essentially a special suit of armour for your chosen job. If you're a new player, this is almost certainly going to be the best gear available to you at that time, and should be acquired ASAP. Then once you hit level 50, you will receive the final piece of that relic armour, the chest piece, as well as the entire level 50 relic set, which will be a straight upgrade of your level 45 set. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that level 50 relic stuff will be item level 90, and once you hit level 50, you'll start receiving the tomestones of Poetics in this case. I have another video all about those linked in the description, but these are essentially currency you'll get for doing dungeon roulettes in the duty finder and special activities. Tomestones of Poetics can be used to obtain powerful level 50 gear. The Ironworks gear that can be obtained from vendors, such as these listed on the screen, is just about the best level 50 gear you're going to get your hands on, and frankly it can last you all the way to level 60. But again, you can definitely replace it around level 54-55 with dungeon gear. These augmented Ironworks items will cost a few hundred tomestones each, and you might want to start with buying the accessories, earrings, bracelets, rings, belts, and so on the right side of your character screen, as you already have this set of eye level 90 artifact gear. And this holds true anytime you're gearing up in Final Fantasy XIV. You want to grab the item that presents the largest upgrade. If your hat is eye level 200, your boots are eye level 100, and you have a choice between eye level 250 hat or boots as a new reward, the boots present the more logical choice. In terms of Which single item is the most important? In my opinion, that would be the weapon. Damage formulas are complex in Final Fantasy XIV, but if you want to do more damage, weapon is generally the first and most important piece. So in terms of priority, we're talking weapon, armour, then accessories. From level 50 up to endgame level cap, which is currently level 80 for example, you will want to be acquiring tombstone gear every 10 levels, and replacing it with dungeon gear where applicable. For example, augmented ironworks gear at level 50 is item level 130. With the 5.3 patch, it was made so that instead of buying regular ironworks gear and then augmenting it, which will increase its item level by 10, you can just straight up buy the augmented version. And that's just to clarify things in case you started playing a while ago and you've come back and you're confused or something, but yes, it used to be you buy ironworks and then you augment it with items. Now you just buy the augmented version. The Airy, a level 55 dungeon, drops item level 136 gear, and the level 59 dungeon Google Library drops iLevel 148 gear. Just to give you an example that yes, this iLevel 130 stuff, it can last you to 60. Then once you hit 60, you use your Tomestones of Poetics to buy the augmented Shire gear, which are item level 270, which is a very big upgrade over Ironworks. Augmented Shire, Ironworks and so on effectively represent the final tier of currency equipment from that respective level range. Then at level 70, you'll be obtaining the augmented Skaven gear. So you hit level cap. How do you gear up now? As new content releases, the strongest gear will gradually be replaced until the next expansion comes out. So here's the basic sort of progression you're going to be looking at, using the level 70 cycle as an example. Dungeon gear, tier 1, item level 300. Tomestone gear, using tier 2 tomes, item level 310. Raid gear, 320. Extreme primals, that's weapons only, 320. Crafted gear, 320. Dungeon gear from tier 2 dungeons, 325. Alliance raid gear, 330. Tomestone gear, using the tier 3 tomes, 330. Then Savage raid gear, 340. This process then repeats and cycles around until the end of the expansion as the level cap increases. Final Fantasy XIV's content cycles are, on average, every 3 months, and the patches themselves are on a cycle roughly like this. In Cycle A, we have Dungeon, Raid Series. Cycle B, Dungeon, Alliance Raid Series. And then we go back to Cycle A with another Dungeon, another Raid Series, then back to Cycle B, Dungeon, Alliance Raid Series. Every new dungeon will of course represent an eye-level leap over the previous dungeon. And these dungeons will have, better gear than the last one, but never the best gear. The best gear will always come from the Savage raids, that's the 8-man raids. And then every few patches they introduce new Tomestone gear. So what you used to buy with the tier 3 Tomestones will now be the tier 2 Tomestones. They will be bumped down and easier to acquire, because the new top tier will of course have a higher item level. Then Alliance raids are what you might think of as a catch-up entry. These generally represent the second best sort of items you can get behind the Savage raids. And it's also worth pointing out that Alliance raids, the 24-man raids, do not drop accessories, only armour. In addition to all of this, each expansion usually has its own relic weapon, a powerful weapon that you can upgrade over the course of the expansion, and every patch or every 2 patches will let you upgrade it and make it stronger, making it so its item level is always going to be near the top, if not the top, the best weapon. If that seems confusing, well, understandable if you're just getting into the game, but please do check the summary at the end of the video for a quick reference, or just ask me in the comments, say, hey, I'm level 80, I'm playing, right now, what is the best items for me? And I will respond ASAP. Next up though, stats. So, your new equipment has some materia slots on them, eh? Well, good news. If you're below max level, you can ignore the materia entirely. You don't need to bother about it. More good news, if you are max level, you can still ignore it. Materia is an optional way to enhance your armor and weapons. Not every armor piece, not every weapon has materia slots on them, but by no means is it mandatory. If you want to min-max, that means if you want to become the most efficient, the strongest you can possibly be, then you want to look into affixing materia to your items. There are various materia melding NPCs listed on screen who will affix these items for you. Players can do it too. But unless you're pushing current high-end content, it's not that important, frankly. But what sort of materia should you be affixing to your equipment if you have the slots and you want to do it? You'll notice that items have caps on stats. So let's say you have a greatsword and it already has a bunch of vitality on it. That probably means you can't affix a bunch of materials to it because you will hit that cap on that item. So that means you cannot keep affixing more vitality to it. But in terms of priority, you can't go wrong with direct hit, critical hit, determination, tenacity, and so on. Of course, it depends on what role you are, because, you know, healers, damage dealers, and so on have different stats, but generally speaking, I would say everyone, whether you're a healer, a tank, or a damage dealer, you all benefit from things like direct hit and critical hit. But as long as you aren't putting, say, spell speed onto a machinist, you're probably fine. Here's the best way to think about materia. If you fully meld materia, the best materia, onto every item that can equip it, the difference in terms of stats is like having an extra ring, an extra accessories worth of stats, maybe. Personally, I enjoy melding skill speed onto every item that my samurai and machinist use because I must shoot and stab faster. Every other job I just go with like crit, hit, or determination. Again, to sum up materia, it's nice to have, but don't stress over it. The only times you would require it is if you are pushing brand new, hard mode content, and you really need every last possible bit of damage you can squeeze out for DPS checks. There's virtually no point in fixing materia prior to reaching level cap, either, unless you need to for an old relic weapon that you want for glamours. Here's a quick summary of how to gear up. Prior to level 50, just take whatever items you can get from dungeons, don't bother buying stuff, or crafting stuff, unless you're doing that anyway. Level 50, Ironworks gear for Tomestones of Poetics. Level 60, Shire gear for Tomestones of Poetics. Level 70, Skaven gear for Tomestones of Poetics. Endgame priority, Savage raid gear, Tier 3 Tomestone gear, which is equivalent to Alliance raid gear, then normal raid gear, and then Tier 2 Tomestone gear. Obviously, the best endgame gear depends on what patch you are on too, but that's a rough outline of what you can expect to see. Alliance raids provide only armor. Raids, Savage and Normal, provide both armor and accessories. Tomestone gear is armor and accessories. Finally, before we finish, crafted gear. Depending on what patch cycle you are on, it's very possible that crafted gear will be some of the best gear available to you in terms of item level. So if you have a surplus amount of gil, you might want to consider looking at the market board and just finding some high level crafted gear that you can buy to immediately outfit yourself the moment you hit level cap, if you're in a rush. And I hope this guide was useful. Again, if you have any questions about gearing up, please do ask them in the comments down below, and I will get back to you ASAP. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take care.